This is Bill Bruford, the ever-enthusiastic young drummer from the group Yes, and you're listening to the Yes Music Podcast.
It's always an absolute pleasure to welcome Billy Sherwood back onto the Yes Music Podcast. So, hello, Billy.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm very well, thank you. And Mark is here as well.
Hello there, Billy.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Good. How you doing, my friend?
Good, man.
Good. So I'll start off the questions for you today.
Okay.
So I'm sure the very first question that everybody would like to know, and I do, of course, as well, is what was the inspiration for creating Arc of Life?
Well, it came out of songwriting, which is really how all the bands I've been involved with have evolved. John Davison and I shared a bus on the 2017 Yes tour. And I had my mobile studio in the back because I was working on various productions and whatnot. And we just kind of started kicking around songs for fun. And before too long, we had kind of 3 or 4 ideas that were developing to a higher level. And we kind of thought maybe we could start steering this towards a band thing. So it was at that point that we kind of made the decision and phoned Jay Shellen up and asked him to get involved, and Jimmy Hahn, who we know from Logic and Circa and all that stuff. And Dave Kersner, who has his own solo career going on at the time. And we all just committed to doing it. And so here we are as a new band, Arc of Life. And it's a pleasure because we're all very good friends. So it makes it just a fun hang, you know?
So you say you and John did a lot of the songwriting. Is it principally you two then who've written this album? This album,
yes. It came out of by virtue of the scheduling that we were under and doing a lot of touring. And in those moments where there were breaks in the tour, I was working on other productions. So it seemed like the writing was really going on when John and I were together. So that's how this album came about. But now that we've formed the thing and, I know that there's talented writers in the band, the idea will be for the next one to get into a studio and just sit down and have some fun for a week and see what we come up with as a unit, you know?
That's fantastic. So the casual music fan, to the casual music fan, it might seem very obvious who did what on the album, but knowing you as well as I do, you are a man of many talents and instrumental talents. So could you maybe clarify who played what on the album?
It's pretty much each man to his own station. You know, I might have strummed a couple acoustic guitars here and there along the way, but for the most part, it's every man to his station. That's the thing I like about being in bands is you can kind of lean on other people to do that stuff. And that's kind of how we went about it. You know, I might have sprinkled a couple overdubs here and there just by virtue of that's how the songs were written. So that basic thing is under there, but then we just layered right on top of all that.
Yeah. So this was done primarily by sending files across the internet in the modern way, was it?
Well, John and I, we recorded a lot of things in the back of the bus, and we also spent time at his house in LA when he was here for one of the breaks, and we got together and knocked out a lot of the vocals together there. And Jay Shellen is local to LA, so we went into a studio and tracked drums and bass together, and so there's components of old school, and then there's the new school file sharing thing involved, kind of both.
Great. Well, I love your bass sounds on this album. So what I'd like to know is, how did you approach this album? Did you want it to sound like Billy Sherwood playing the bass, or like Chris Squire playing the bass, or something else?
Well, I mean, I think I'm stuck in that I have to accept I need it to sound like Billy Sherwood. I'm screwed. It just so happens that I bring in influences of my past, Jocko, Chris, McCartney, Colin Moulding, John Wetton. And I kind of, in my mind, want to honor those things and bring a hybrid of all those feelings to the table, but still doing my own thing. And the sounds are the sounds that I've had programmed for quite some time now. And it's, I love my rig, the way it works. It's just fantastic with all the Line 6 stuff and the programming of the console that I can do. I can pretty much dial the tone in exactly how I want it. So it's nice to know someone appreciates it.
Yeah. So after reading a few of the reviews and comments, it appears that Dave Kersner was added to the band pretty much after the album was written. Now, I mean, obviously you were discussing some of this in the earlier questions we asked, but is there really a reason why he was added so late to the whole thing?
Well, we weren't really heading towards seriously like, here comes the mastering, we're getting done yet. And we pretty much started layering people in as we went. It wasn't like we just picked up the phone in one evening and put it all together. So it took a little bit of time in that regard. And Dave was the last one through the door, so to speak. But he went in and layered all of his stuff. And, there we are with everything. It just it was just the timeline of really, quite frankly, pre-COVID. Yes was very, very busy.
Yeah.
And when Yes wasn't busy, I was busy making records and doing what I'm doing. So it was really only as we approached the seriousness of like, okay, now we're going to actually get this going, that the keyboards were the last component into the picture.
So just really quickly, one thing I wanted to add to that is we all know how talented Dave Kersner is as far as technology and stuff like that as well. Did any of his expertise in that come into play near the end, like maybe in some of the mixing or some of those aspects?
Well, I can tell you that his sounds from the IK Multimedia library that he's got, I've sworn by since I met the guy. And those colors are all over the record because, we lean towards those same kind of sounds, and he knows what I'm talking about. And so the imprint of what he does in that regard is there in a very, very big way. And, I know Jim uses a lot of the plugins for amplitude and stuff too, as I do. And so the flavors of his other world, if you will, are all over the record.
Yeah.
And now his personality is coming through on the record as well.
So who would you say produced this album then? Is it an Arc of Life produced album, or you, or what?
Well, it came about basically, I'm obviously a producer, so I'm going to have a lot of input, and the masters live under my roof and all that kind of stuff. But the guys had so much input that it felt like we were all producing it together. And, Derek Shulman was also in the loop helping me produce it by virtue of like sending files back and forth and giving me notes to check out this, maybe double this, maybe expand this part, or take the drums out here and change the time signatures, all those kind of things. So kind of a collaborative effort on this one, really. It wasn't just me alone making all the decisions,
Yeah. So I like a lot of the vocal work on the album, and it sort of put me in mind of those days when John Anderson used to share some vocal duties with Trevor Rabin, because you and John do share some lead vocals on this. How did that come about? It was a deliberate choice to share those vocals?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the discussions we had going in, which is like, let's meet in the middle on who's doing what, and that will give it a sound unto itself. In the way that John Lennon and Paul McCartney did that, and Gilmore and Roger or Supertramp, those two guys, and that way we can expand on what the colors are coming out of the speakers, So it was something we were well aware of and took advantage of as best we could.
Yeah, that did mean that the first single, which I really like, and I keep playing it, and it keeps going around my head. It's very catchy indeed. Actually, you had the lead vocal role on that, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't kind of decide, okay, you sing this one, I'll sing that one. It just sort of naturally came more in the writing process. If it felt right, me singing it, we left it. And if it felt better with John singing it, we left that, And how we kind of came to that was just trial and error. But I think we ended up with the right kind of combination to give it an interesting new sort of perspective on things.
Yeah.
Great. So the album is really good. I really enjoyed it. I've been listening to it quite a bit. And I hear moments from some of your earlier solo records, and I even hear like little moments of Open Your Eyes on it as well. Do you feel that you have a recognizable writing style at this point? That's not a bad thing though, of course. Do you think that you have like a writing style of your own that's very Billy Sherwood?
Well, I mean, I've been told that so much by now that I guess so. You know what I mean? I don't really stop to think about it. Like when I go in there to write, like, okay, I better make sure I'm writing like myself again. I just go in there and create what I create. I have a style and a method of recording that puts me in a lane of consistency, and I think after time, that consistency is understood by the listener, and Lord knows there's been enough time by now, that if I didn't have my own sound, I'd be more concerned about that.
Yeah, true.
You know? I mean, in the same way that I can hear a record without anyone telling me and know that it's Hugh Padgham who did the production just by virtue of the way the record sounds.
Yeah.
That was one of the things, or Todd Rundgren or any of those kind of producers that bring their technique and textures and sounds to the table, gives it that little imprint of them. I kind of always was striving to do that. Eddie Offord had the same thing. You could just tell.
Or Jeff Lynne.
Or Jeff, yeah. I mean, all those guys, they have an imprint. So I guess it comes with the territory, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, talking specifically about one of the songs, which is another one of my favorites, is Locked Down. And that's a long song, isn't it? I do have a couple of questions about it. First of all, how do you approach putting together, such an epic form like that? Do you sketch it out, or is it all in your head, or how do you go about it?
I think part of it is freeing your mind and letting go of structure constraints that might stop your creative process, thinking this is getting too long. And actually at that point, trying to make it more interesting so that you actually want to go listen to the 7th minute in, because it's that cool, So it's hard one to come up with. It's sort of a je ne sais quoi, as they say, but it when you're doing it, because if it's not working, when John and I were structuring a lot of this, we were kind of looking at each other to make sure that we were doing the right things. And we were both excited and enjoying the way that it twists and turns and it's arranging. So we kind of knew we were onto something cool. And then it's just a matter of sort of mixing it in a way that it's entertaining from tip to tail, and that there's always little moments that keep grabbing you into the picture so that you don't realize that you've been listening to it for however long it is.
Yeah.
It's just an enjoyable experience.
Absolutely.
There's one thing I'm not into, and it's a classic thing with sort of the prog mentality, if you will, of the genre, is like, if it's not 35 minutes, it's not prog. I don't really subscribe to that kind of thinking. I want it to just be entertaining from tip to tail. I don't want to get to the end of the movie and it fell apart at the very end.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a couple of other questions about that. Possibly my favorite song, actually, Locked Down.
Cool.
And certainly it does keep the attention right the way through. So can I hear a bit of tomato bass sound on there? Is there a bit of harmonization or something like that going on in there?
There might be a little bit of that Chris Squire-y sort of envelope filter, old school Eventide harmonizer thing that I used to just love to death. Spent a lot of time programming so that it was nailed. It's a funny thing, that sound. I mean, technically speaking, as a bass player, I built that sound and I was so proud of it. And Chris heard it too. And Chris was like, damn, that's there it is, And what was funny is it's built off of his old envelope filter, the Mutron Phase, or with or Q something. Anyway, whatever that unit was, I went and bought it. After I programmed it, thinking, well, damn, if I got it that nailed, it can only get better if it's the real deal. And when I went the old school route, I was like, whoa, this is not even close. So I went back to my digital world of replication, and it works out quite well. So it's funny you notice that, because that's, there's something about playing with that patch that just smooths every corner. Just kind of just got this nice, just smooth ride to it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. And another thing which sort of cropped up when I was listening to it, is there a bit of Chris Squire's Safe Cannon song at one point, or at least an influence?
Well, I think it goes without saying there's probably always going to be a fish out of water influence in the backing vocals when I get into that kind of area. And I know John's a fan of that record too. So I wouldn't doubt somewhere in our subconscious there's something going on in that way.
Yeah.
I wasn't an intentional let's put this bar of music in there and just reflect on his record, but that feeling, I know that feeling well, like what you're talking about. If it comes out, it's like it's a good thing, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. Great song.
So I'm going to preface my question by saying that under normal circumstances, if I didn't know you as well as I do, Billy, I wouldn't dare ask you this question, but I'm going to take a chance and ask you this now. So I have this feeling, and I could be totally wrong about this, that you guys were trying to write a slightly more, I'm going to dare say, commercially friendlier album with Arc of Life. I'm guessing that that there'll be a more adventurous, a little bit more proggier second release from Arc of Life. Is that kind of the plan, or am I way off here?
No, well, I think anything's possible. And I think one of the things we did on purpose was to show the range of expansion that's available is how you go from the top of the album, which is pretty straight ahead, even though it's proggy and it's arranging. And then by the time you get to Therefore We Are, it's flowered into these very long pieces of music that are sort of the bigger pieces. So I think that shows the potential of what we can do. And with those, without any of those limitations of, we can do kind of whatever we're looking to do, as long as it's, again, if it holds the listener in, then I'm cool with a short song that's something you can't stop listening to over and over versus a long song that you want to hear once, or vice versa. I'm good with it either way.
Well, because I'm a huge fan of your prog collective albums. I've always listened to those. I even just recently purchased the vinyl version of it as well. And cool. I really, really love those songs. And I mean, I know that you're the mastermind behind a lot of those songs. So I almost kind of envision later on maybe like a little bit of that sort of direction, because you have, Dave now going to be more involved with the writing on the next record. So I'm kind of thinking that it might be a little bit more, adventurous in that aspect.
Well, I think it's going to, by virtue of us getting in a room and playing together, all five live, old school, there'll be a bit more experimental stuff going on for sure. It just happens by its very nature of how you do that versus starting a song writing with a click at a tempo and get, you know what I mean? As sitting in a room. So anything's possible. And I think the creativity inside of the band is pretty big. Everybody's a real creative person. I mean, Jimmy Hahn's writing skills are killer, and as Dave, and Jay is also a great writer. So, I think that something very interesting will happen when we go about that,
Yeah. Okay, well, we've seen the front cover of Arc of Life, and we've heard the music. What sort of formats is it going to be released in? Are you going to do a vinyl version and digipack, or what's it going to be like?
I'm not really sure about that part, and I've been asked it quite a bit in these interview streams that I've been doing lately. And I don't really know if they're going to put out vinyl or not. Of course, I'm always the last one to know. I find out we're doing a Yes tour via Facebook, so I'm not the wrong guy to ask.
Yeah, but you'd like to see it on vinyl, though, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, it would be pretty awesome if it could come out on vinyl. That's for sure.
Yeah, keeping my fingers crossed.
I mean, it would have to be 2 discs at least, wouldn't it? As it's an hour of music.
I guess so, because otherwise you'd be pushing the envelope. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed for telling us all about that. Now, we've just got a few questions about Yes, as we've got you here on the Yes Music podcast. And we've heard some slightly different things about the new Yes studio album from various different members of the band. What can you tell us about its state of readiness?
What did they tell you?
Are you aware of Alan's interview that he did?
I'm recently aware that I've been sworn to secrecy on a higher level, so I can't really get into it too much.
Right.
But all I can say is that these are some seriously creative forces at work, and it's gonna be good.
Yeah, because from what we've heard, because Alan went on a live stream, and said that the record at that point, when he was talking about it, he said that it was already at mixing stage. And he said that he already released a song title and all kinds of things to it. I mean, I don't know if he was supposed to have done that at all, but it kind of got out. Now, we're not going to obviously force you, Billy, to say anything, obviously, right? But we were just curious about your end of it, because Jeff, when we talked to him, kind of confirmed that there is a record and it is going on, but he said it wasn't really at the mixing stage at that point when we spoke to him. So we were just kind of wondering, like, how far along are you aware of what's going on?
I know about everything at this point. and it's I'm hoping that it comes to be sooner than later, because I know the Yes fans want a new studio album, and I know there's a bass and a keyboard and a guitar involved and some vocals.
Wow, we would have never have guessed that.
Yeah.
Well, can you at least tell us if you were how much you were involved with the writing? Can you tell us that?
I have written some things.
Okay,
I can say that.
Okay.
fair enough.
Yes, I've written some things.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I'm walking a bit of a tightrope politically, because the band wants it, to be tightly to the vest.
Of course.
But when you tell me my own comrades are kind of speaking of it, I'll leave it to them to be the speakers.
Yeah. I know it's a difficult position to be put in. I'm sure. So
it's a little tricky.
Well, let's talk about live stuff then for a change. So
Okay.
I've got as I said to Jeff Downs when we interviewed him last week, I've got my tickets for the Birmingham concert, so the Relayer tour in May. What's your gut feeling about whether you're going to be able to do that or not?
I wake up every morning hoping that this whole thing's coming to an end swiftly. So I hope that somehow there's that we can stay on course and do what we can do. Obviously, it's got to be done safely, and everyone needs to feel comfortable about going to a show. So I guess we're all sort of in the same boat of wanting this thing that we just have to wait patiently and see. Although it's really difficult, man, because it's like I'm dying to play live. I mean, it's like the fact that we didn't do anything last year is really it was really a drag. But obviously, what are you going to do? It's a pandemic going on. So but hopefully the corner is turned with vaccines and herd immunity and all these things. But, right at the moment, it's kind of a little bit heavy. I mean, I know you guys over there in England are dealing with some stuff. So, and we're dealing with it here in California. Although they did just lift the stay-at-home order. So this weekend we get to go eat in restaurants again, which is a small victory.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So, but we need that vaccine, I guess. We need everybody to have the vaccine, because I don't think you're going to be able to travel or walk into a venue unless you have some card that they can prove. We're entering a whole new arena of bureaucracy that's going to be cray.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. So, Billy, this has been something I've been kind of thinking about for a little while now. So, obviously, the Relayer album is the big thing for when you guys come back next, the whole album that you're going to be performing.
The album I learned in its entirety. It's been 6 weeks learning that I've completely forgotten. Yes, that one.
That one, yeah. So have you guys ever discussed after the fact, now that you've done that one, you've done quite a bit of the catalog, has there ever been a discussion of maybe doing Tormato in full for one of these kind of tours, or like a record like The Ladder or something like that? Or is that something that's already way too in the distance to even think about?
Anything is possible. And obviously those records would be really good to touch on and do. So I don't know, I think anything's possible. I mean, Tormato's kind of a sticky one with the guys a little bit, because for whatever reason, because I mean, I really enjoy Tormato. It was one of the Yes records I listened to quite a lot, I mean, I listened to all of them a lot, but Tormato was, I don't see why it gets kind of dogged on, but it's one of these things where the feeling that is involved with the record and how that felt, I guess, pervades, and it's just, we have to see, but I'm into it. I'll play anything.
Well, I'm very glad to hear you saying that about Tormato, because anyone listening to the podcast already knows that that's my favorite album. And,
Future Times, Rejoice,
absolutely.
Release, Silent with Freedom, Onward. I mean, hello.
Yeah. Absolutely. It doesn't get any better for me than that. And when I first experienced Yes, it was a cassette tape lent to me which had 90125 on one side and Tormato on the other. And I flipped it over and played Tormato, and my mind was blown, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that bass playing on there is actually some of
yeah.
my favorite Chris's bass playing ever. And it's just so commanding and just leading the way on everything. It's just awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that gets my vote if you ever can do that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Billy, it's been delightful to speak to you. Wonderful fun, as always. And I think we ought to let you go and practice relayer, particularly Sound Chaser. I don't know if that's... But anyway, seriously, thank you very much indeed, Billy.
Yeah, thanks, Billy.
Thank you, man. You guys take care.
All right,
Thanks,
take care, Billy.